Hi, good morning. This is Anatai. I'm the author of the book Eat to Focus here. So some of you might have read it already. So for today, I think I'm going to talk about the steps that I talk about in the book because I kind of was reading a lot of the posts in the Facebook group, which if you're not a member yet, you should go on it. So just go to Facebook and search Natural Alternative ADHD Treatment. That's the name of the group. It's a long one, so you're not going to miss it. But anyway, I want to talk about the protocol in there and why I um, kind of designed that regimen. And the reason why I'm doing that or want to talk about that today is because in the Facebook group, sorry, it's kind of getting a bit hot. In the Facebook group, I noticed that a lot of people will hyper focus on like a supplement, like, oh, my child cannot focus. What supplement can I get? Or my child is very hyper. What supplement can I give him? So I think people have this misconception that the supplement, they kind of treating the supplements like another medication, right? Like you have a headache, you take a headache medicine. You have high blood pressure, you take a blood pressure medicine. Or you have like um, whatever symptoms, like a skin problem, you take like a pill for a skin. So they have this mentality of like a one pill to one symptoms thing. So when they try to look into an alternative treatment for the ADHD, they're using the same idea that, oh yeah, my child cannot focus. So maybe there's a supplement, a pill that is for focus. And if my child is hyper or impulsive, there's a pill for that. But instead of like a pharmaceutical pill, they're looking for an supplement, which they think, oh yeah, pill is pill. But anyway, I think in my talk last week or 2 weeks ago, I talked about the different ways that supplements are used, and there are basically three or four categories of supplements. So, and like how there's one category that is actually quite dangerous and should be used with some supervision. And but anyway, so I want to talk about that today. So let's just start with the causes of ADHD. So so we talk about like how the pill to symptoms doesn't work, and that's not how my book was intended. Even though inside my book I do have a lot of recommendations for supplements and stuff, but the supplements are not given to say, oh yeah, your child can't focus, let's take zinc, or your child can't focus, let's take vitamin D. Those supplements does not serve a purpose like that. And the reason why is because the protocol is written based on the six most common causes of underlying causes of ADHD. So the thing is, what with like a lot of the treatment, like more the alternative one, people are just like I said, they're just looking for a pill for the symptoms, right? So they're not really looking into the underlying cause. And in my book, the protocol, like I said, is based on the most common six underlying causes. And yeah, we're not talking about the behavioral cause, but just focusing on the biochemical side of the whole ADHD spectrum thing. So yeah, so one of the first cause of the ADHD obviously is the brain is different, and there are brain scan to show that. And I'm not an expert to talk about that. Dr. Amen will be a much better person for that. So maybe in the future, I'm lucky enough I can get him to come talk to us. So yeah. So there is definitely some chemical and structural difference in the ADHD brain. So few things. So first of all, the ADHD brain, the prefrontal cortex tends to be smaller, um, about 10% smaller than a regular brain. It's also delayed, so average 3 years delay. So you might have like a 10-year-old child who have the attention span of more like a 7-year-old. So that's why they kind of like stick out like a sore thumb in a 10-year-old classroom because they're like behaving more like a 7-year-old. And then the chemical, the dopamine and few other chemicals tends to be lower. That's another more of the hallmark um, feature of the ADHD brain. And that's also the area that most ADHD medication focuses on, is to boost that brain chemical. And then there's a fourth, the fourth one is the ADHD brain doesn't process sugar as well. So generally, as the human brain actually um, feel or uses only sugar or glucose in the blood as energy. But for some reason, the ADHD brain just doesn't process that sugar very well. So, like a high carb or high sugar diet is not that well. It's not that good. But another time I'll talk about how sugar affects the ADHD brain. But anyway, so those are the four kind of interesting feature of the ADHD brain. So that's the first cause. The second cause, which a lot of people start noticing more, is the digestion. So a lot of kids with ADHD or even kids with autism, they're all kind of linked together. ADHD and autism, kids tends to have both, like a lot of the kids that I saw. Um, so the gut, so people often think, okay, the brain is up here, but the gut is down here. So how are they connected? The interesting thing is that the bacteria in the gut actually makes a lot of the brain chemicals that the brain uses. And like yeah, the bacteria. So that's how the gut affected. And then of course, if your gut is not functioning well, you're not able to digest food properly, you cannot absorb food properly. So you can feed your child the best diet in the world, but if the food is not getting through the system, he's not getting the nutrition to the brain. And then the third, this will be a test. I don't know if I can remember all six, but it's okay. I have the book here. The third one, oh yeah, malnutrition. So there are actually some studies that show that kids with ADHD symptoms have more malnutrition, and that's what the supplements is for inside the book. The ones that I recommend, like the omega-3 fatty acid, the zinc, the iron, all of those, and magnesium, those are for correcting malnutrition or nutrient deficiency. It's not to solve or improve or cure these symptoms. So malnutrition, so basically is that the body is not getting the nutrition that it needs. So if the body is starving, the brain is starving as well. So there are like some common nutrients that they're deficient in kids and even adults with ADHD. I mentioned a few, so omega-3 fatty acid, zinc, iron, vitamin D, and B vitamins. And the reason of that is multifactorial again. So could be because digestion is not working well, so the food in is not being digested and absorbed, or maybe prematurity. So there's studies that show that premature baby who didn't have enough time in a mom's body is not able to get all the nutrients that it needs. And that's a complicated issue. I can have another talk on that. But and also children from orphanage, like adopted children, I see a lot of those at work as well. Kids um, who are adopted from orphanage, a lot of times they don't have enough food to eat. So when I see them, usually they're pretty malnourished and they have very funny eating behaviors because of the lack of food in the orphanage. They teach them like certain coping skills to eat a certain way so they're not hungry all the time. So malnutrition. Okay, I'm gonna cheat. Oh, okay. Uh, environmental. There's one more. Okay. Environmental toxin is one. So with environmental toxin, let's just hold on one second. Let me look for the other one. I might not talk about the other one because the other one is not as common. Just bear with me. Okay, yeah, we'll just talk about one more. The other one is the genetic defect. Oh gosh, I missed out a big one. Okay, before we talk about environment, the other one is food allergies. This is a huge one because a lot of the kids actually have like true, real allergies that you know about, but there's also hidden allergies. So, but I'm not going to talk about too much today because I did talk about that, I think 2 weeks ago. So you can go back. And by the way, all these videos are recorded. So you can go to my YouTube channel and you can find it from there. And I'll put the link in the chat box later. Okay, so food allergy is the third one. The fourth one we're going to talk about. Did I get the numbers right? The fourth one is environmental toxins. So this is an interesting one because when we think of environmental toxin, we're talking, well, most of us was immediately think of like contaminated water, contaminated air, and all those things. But environment, in the medical sense, is everything around me. Like I'm here, my human body is here, so everything around me, not just the physical stuff. So the air that I breathe, the water that I drink, the food, that's part of the environment. And the social interaction, because even though we're only focusing on like food is something that we ingest, but it's also the stress in the environment, right? Like the interaction with people around you, interaction with school, because stress also affects your gut bacteria and how your brain function. So all these like interaction can change your brain chemistry, change your gut chemistry. So all of those. So that's what the environmental part is. So it's not just the chemicals in the food or water or air. So the ones that I focus on in the book is the food additive. Like I'm a big um, advocate against food chemicals. Sorry, like allergy season here. Okay, so food chemicals or food additives. The reason why I'm very against that is that not that I'm a snob, like, oh, only eat clean. There's a reason why um, those things are not added or not shouldn't be in your body. First of all, if you the reason why some of those things are added to the food, like the food colorings and some flavorings, the reason why they're added to the food by food manufacturer is really not for your health. It's really to make the food look and taste good, so you keep buying. So it's more of a profit base for their profit, not our profit or even our health. So some of the food is added to it to make it taste really good, so you become addicted to it. So something like sugar, if you look at, just go to the store and pick up a bottle of salad dressing and you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna be eating all this salad. Oh yeah, let's get some salad dressing, it's good for me, right? Pick up a bottle of salad dressing, you'll see sugar in it, like the second or the third ingredients. So manufacturer knows how the human brain works and how the human psyche works. So they do things to make the food looks good and taste good. So you buy more. And the other thing that they add to the food is they add preservative to the food. So the food doesn't spoil. So the food can stay on the shelf for 2 years. 2 years. So they have 2 years to sell a food that normally will have spoiled in like a week, right? So just think of it this way. If a food doesn't spoil, even bacteria doesn't eat it, do you really think that your human digestion can actually break it down and get the nutrients out from it? I don't think so, right? Because the bacteria are pretty smart, right? The bacteria have no emotional brain, so they don't have all that like extra like thinking process, like, oh, should I eat this or should I not? They're like, that's not food, I'm not touching that. So Yeah, so take a hint from the bacteria. If you leave a food out in the open and no roaches or ants or the food doesn't get spoiled, it is not food because learn from the insects because the instinct says no, that's not food. I'm not touching it. So anyway, so environmental toxins, so mostly the chemicals in the food, and the big one with ADHD obviously is the food coloring. So most of you, if you're here or kind of just started, you probably that's probably the first thing that you started. And like I know there's still doctors and scientists out there that say that, oh yeah, food colorings have nothing to do with it. But that's like the number one thing that most parents told me they see a change. Like they'll give them a bottle of red Gatorade or red Kool-Aid or whatever. They'll see the kids just flip to the other side, like gone crazy. So that's the number one food coloring. And one thing about food coloring is that if you live in the United States like me, food coloring is still legal. I think there's about what 1,000 different food colorings, man-made food colorings that are legal to be in the food. But if you live in Europe, and I think there are about Europe and someplace else, maybe Canada, Australia, I don't remember. Other countries in the world, food colorings are banned from the food. Maybe not quite banned, but if you put it in the food, you actually have to state that, oh, this food contains food coloring. So because of that statement, so a lot of manufacturers actually decide to not put food coloring in the product so they don't have to put that label on it. And that includes a lot of the company in the United States. So they'll make the version for the US, which is loaded with food colorings. Then they'll make another version for the Europe or other countries version that have no food coloring in it. So that's the toxic part of the environment. But there's also another toxic environmental aspect of that contributes to some of the ADHD symptoms, which is the screen time. So I think a lot of parents are working on or are aware of the screen time, like limiting the time that your kids can spend on the iPad or tablets. And a funny thing, um, the iPad is the iPad is from Apple, right? And Steve Jobs, who's the CEO of Apple, actually does not allow he didn't allow his kids to have the iPad or play on the iPad because he know how addicting it is. So his kids don't even have an iPad, but he's selling it to everyone else because he knows it can make a profit for Apple because it's addicting. And for kids with ADHD, anything that is stimulating will help them focus or hyper focus or give them that boost of energy. So um, that's one of the reason why um, you see people with ADHD or even kids with ADHD have a lot of addictive behavior. Like some people binge eat, so they self-medicating with food. And let me just talk about that later. So binge eating, addicted to caffeine, addicted to certain sodas like Diet Coke or Mountain Dew, caffeine. So all those are coffee related drinks. Sugar, addicted to sugar, addicted to carbs, and what's the other one? Oh, and milk. So it's like I know that eating sometimes having a glass of milk or eating cheese is good, but sometimes in people or even in kids with ADHD, what we notice is more of an addictive behavior. They'll scream and cry for bread or crackers, or like even adult, you see that like adult want cheese all the time, and there's a reason, a very good biochemical reason for that. So all of those addictive behavior all boils down to the bring like that little part. I can't point it inside, but the dopamine receptor, the dopamine or the reward center. So again, going back to the brain chemistry of the ADHD brain is there's a low brain chemicals of the dopamine. So with like sugar and carbs, carbs get converted into sugar. Sugar is just sugar. So all of those stimulate the ADHD brain in the dopamine receptive center, even though the ADHD brain doesn't process sugar very well. So it's like they keep knocking on the door but not letting the sugar in. So they need to have a lot of sugar to stimulate that spot. And sugar is a lot more addicting than other carb food is because just remember sugar is a chemical. It's really not food. It's just a chemical that tastes good. So when you eat sugar, it stimulates the dopamine center. But then over time, you need more and more of that sugar to get the same dopamine, the rise in dopamine. It's kind of like it acts almost like a cocaine. Basically, sugar is like another the legal cocaine in an ingested form. So just like say when you go to a very, very nice steakhouse and have a very good piece of steak that is cooked perfect, and you take that first bite, you're like, oh my God, this is so good. Like your brain lights up, right? With that first couple bite of the steak. Like, oh my God, this is like the best steak ever. So you get that response, that little high of eating a food that tastes good. But then as as you keep eating and keep eating, that last bite of steak doesn't taste as good as the first bite of steak because that stimulation from that new food, it doesn't last. It doesn't continue to stimulate that dopamine response. It's like the more you eat certain food, then it becomes, oh, it's kind of okay now, right? But with eating carbs and sugar is different because it's a chemical response. So you eat the carbs or the sugar or like the milk and cheese and gluten. Those are different response. So those food have chemicals that stimulate the dopamine center. So you stimulate, toot, 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 and then the brain makes dopamine, and the dopamine level rise. You get that little burst of energy. Oh wow, that feels good, and then it crash because the sugar or the carbs are gone, then you're like, oh, I'm feeling a bit low. But last time I had this sugary sweet stuff or something like cookies or like even caffeine, right? If you think about coffee, Starbucks coffee, you have all the three addictive ingredients in it: um, caffeine, milk, and sugar. That's why Starbucks can sell expensive coffee. Not that I'm against Starbucks. I go there once in a while, but I don't go there like 2, 3 times a day. And I do know people who goes there 2, 3 times a day. So, but when you have something like that actually acts more like a chemical, so it gives you that dopamine rise. Oh yeah, I get that high. That feels good. So you associate that food with that feel good feeling, right? The next day you have that slum, that 3 o'clock slum, like, oh my God, I need something to bring myself up, right? So you go to Starbucks and get another coffee. So you get a hit of caffeine, sugar, and milk. Then you get that high again. Then the next day or after like couple weeks or months, you're like, oh wow, just one coffee doesn't cut it. I have to go every 2 hours or every 3 hours. So anyway, that's how you create that sugar um, intolerance, I guess, or that um, tolerance. So you just need more and more of. And then that's how you become addicted because you don't have that other any other coping mechanism to bring you from a low energy level to bring it up to normal. So then you become reliant on an outside substance to help do that job. So that's how you become addicted to it. And then the number six cause is the MTHFR genetic or gene mutation. So we're not going to talk about that. It's common, but not super common. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot explaining about the genetics of that. But anyway, so those are the causes, right? So now you understand that these causes is all kind of food related or chemical related and can be corrected with food, right? So with the first of all, with the ADHD brain that is behind, because I'm a pediatric dietitian, so a lot of my job is focused on how to bring the kids to catch up growing. So that's kind of like the intent of um, with the protocol. The first part is, or actually not first part. One of the steps in the protocol is to what can we feed the brain to bring to try to help it catch up. If it's 10%, 10% smaller in the frontal lobe, and then overall 3 years behind, how can we feed this brain better nutrition, better food to bring the functions and catching up with that growth to the peer to the same size as peer. So that's one of the protocol, focusing on eating healthy food and brain building and good brain food. And then the other part is actually the first part of the protocol is eliminating as much environmental toxin as possible. Eliminating 100% is impossible, and you're going to drive yourself crazy. So you just try to do your best. Like, this is not a diet or anything. This is actually a treatment protocol, and you just do as much as you can. It's just like any medication. You do half the effort, you get half the results. So if you aim for 90% of the effort, you still get 90% of the results. You don't need to be 100%, but just do whatever you can. And then so focusing on the brain food that feeds your your brain, and then the other one is eliminating any of the chemicals or junk in the environment that makes the brain function worse. And, and then what's the third one? Oh, correcting the gut imbalance. So that's part of the eating part, focusing on the right food for the brain and the right food for the gut. So avoiding sugar, carbs that the bacteria likes to, and junk food. Bad bacteria likes junk food. And then the supplement. So the supplement is to correct any common nutrient deficiency in ADHD. So again, it's like your omega-3 fatty acid, which is a big part of the brain, vitamin D, iron, magnesium, zinc, and vitamin Bs. So all those vitamins are good for ADHD as part of the correction process, not a targeted symptoms treatment. And what's the other thing? Oh, and then exercise. So um, the last step of the ADHD or the Eat to Focus protocol is actually the exercise, or the what I call rebooting the brain. Because when you start putting all those things, all those good stuff to make your brain function better, next step is creating the focus process, right? Because the brain, what we see is a lump of fat. That's what the brain is. But what we don't see is all the neural connection. Because the only way the brain can function at its best is all those pathways are going to the right place. Because you don't want something fire here and fire in the wrong place. That's not how we want your brain to function. We want to have the correct pathways. In order to do that, you have to do specific exercise that makes the brain have to focus. Because if for years your child's brain is used to like going all direction, you don't want that going to all direction kind of connection to be stronger. You want the right kind of connection. So that's why like you need to implement more structure in not really like structure play, but just more structure for the brain connection. So doing things like quiet time, yoga. Yoga study shows that yoga do change the brain structures. It helps to calm the brain. So when you do more focus time and yoga, no, I think I mean meditation. Meditation helps to create more of the calm nerve connections. And studies do show that kids who do yoga, I think 2-3 times a week, actually show more focus and more concentration. Yoga is another good exercise, not the only one that's good for ADHD, but it's just something fun, I think, because yoga have a lot of funny poses, so you can have your kids do that. Just make it fun. And then the nice thing with yoga is that when you do a pose that seemingly looks so easy, it actually builds body awareness. When you're doing a pose, you actually have to be aware of where your arm, where your legs is. So that helps to create body awareness and create um, like brain connections that focus on that. And then also sports. A lot of people like put their kids with ADHD in sports, thinking that, oh yeah, they can just run off all that energy. But there's a specific type of sports that do better for ADHD. My daughter was initially, I put my daughter in soccer thinking that, oh yeah, she can just run in the field. But then it doesn't work because it's a team sports. So she just stands like behind and all the girls like running after the ball. I was like, how come you don't run after the ball? She's like, there are 5 girls running after one ball. Why do I need to run after that? Like just let them chase for that. Like 5 girls after one ball, like that's crazy. So I was like, oh yeah, that's there's a point. so so then we switched to tennis, which is a lot better because tennis is a single sports and it requires very specific technique. So you actually have to take lesson and learn how to hit the ball, how to hold a racket. So that requires a lot more like brain coordination, like forcing the brain to actually focus on where each muscle have to go. So that works out better for her. So that's the type of sports that will do better with kids with ADHD. So tennis, golf, taekwondo, um, cycling, and I don't know about running. Running can be boring for them, but any kind of sports that require specific skills that they have to sustain that focus, those work better. And a lot of adults like they do endurance sports like triathlons or things like that. Like yeah, a lot of the doctors that I work with at work, they have ADHD, and many of them do participate in sports, and I think that's the form of medication, and which there is studies do show exercise help with ADHD, helping them with focus, because one, it brings more oxygen, increased blood flow to the brain, and it definitely helps with calming down afterwards. And what's his name? Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmers, he actually have ADHD, and I think one of the interview he said that actually swimming saved his life because he was with ADHD just can't quite function, but the swimming does help calm him down. So yeah, so swimming is another good sport. Golf definitely is very very challenging if you never play sports. Like tennis so much easier than golf. Golf is so hard, but it's all mental. Um, yeah, so those are the four steps of the protocol. So eliminating all the chemicals in the food, and then feeding the brain food that makes it work better and help it to catch up growing, then correcting any nutritional deficiency. Or actually also the food is also to help correct indigestion or any problem of digestion, absorbing food, and then supplements to correct any nutrient deficiency. And the fourth one is rebuilding those brain chemicals. So like exercise kind of like an orchestra, right? Like if you're planning an orchestra or building a home, you need to know where things go. So that's what the fourth steps of the protocol is. And I guess that's it for today. So like I said, if you're not in the ADHD group, go ahead and go to your Facebook and then search for natural alternative ADHD treatment, and you should find the group there. And the group is growing strong, is a very big and very active and supportive group. So go check it out. Or if you're not a Facebook person, go to Instagram. I have an Instagram post or account. Is this one is a lot easier. Is just eat to focus. Um, so Instagram and search eat to focus, and you'll find us. And then all of these videos are videotaped, so they're all in YouTube right now. So if you go YouTube and search for Anna the dietitian, and you'll find them. And and I'll try and post it in the group and also the email list. And then of course, if you just go to Amazon and you can get a paper copy of this book as well. And all the things I discussed is in it. And then if anything, just drop it in the comment below and let me know what you think, what other topics you're interested in the future. Okay? And otherwise, goodbye and have a good weekend. Okay? Bye, everyone.